This is Coder Radio, episode 83 for January 6th, 2014. Everyone, you're listening to Coder Radio, Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly talk show taking a pragmatic look at the art and business of software development and related technologies. This episode's brought to you by our three fine sponsors, GoDaddy, Ting, and DigitalOcean. I'll tell you more about those great sponsors as this here show goes on. My name is Chris, and joining us every single week is our excellent host on the East Coast, Mr. Michael Dominic. Hey there, Michael.
Stakeholders.
Tastes like steak. Only maybe a hollow steak.
Do you know you can get at the Lancaster, PA Ren Fair steak on a steak?
Wait, what? Now, so they're calling the stick a steak.
Right.
Yeah, okay. That's clever, actually.
I would like to modify that for Jupiter Broadcasting. Have stakeholder on a steak.
Yeah, well, the stakes are high, as they might be. Right. Oh, hey, guess what? Episode 83 of the Coder Radio program, first episode of 2014, and we got a good one. We're going to have a special guest join us. Mark works at Oracle as a software engineer, and he'll be coming on after we get through the feedback to talk about all kinds of things, like important things like mascots. But Mr. Dominic, before we go on, I just wanted to let you know, just to keep the continuity alive, even though it's a new year, I am right now enjoying a freshly brewed cup of AeroPress coffee. And It's fantastic.
All right, so I seem to, even at good old Fingertip Tech, I'm one of the non-AeroPressers. Explain to me, what's the deal?
Well, I'll tell you, you were right. On the pre-show, you said it looks like a science kit experiment for like an 8th grader, and I totally agree with you because it's like a beaker and all that kind of stuff, and it's got a lot of little parts. You got your filters, you got your filter holder, you got your filter cap, you got your funnel, your stir stick, and your plunger, of course. And
so it sounds like a super French press. Is that basically what it is?
Yeah, it's actually really crazy easy to do. All you have to do is grind your beans. You put them in the top of the beaker there. You pour in the hot water and let it stew. And then after it stews for a minute or two, you flip it over on top of your cup and you just push it down.
Interesting.
I mean, it's really easy. You have to get some hot water. Like Zane, Zane in the chat room here.
Yes.
He's got a whole recipe up on his website. He measures out his beans. He measures out his water, like weight and everything. I don't go that far. I don't really bother. I would say this. So if you're willing to grind and then pour it into a thing and then plunge and all that kind of stuff, it's about a 3-minute process, depending on how fast your thing heats up.
That's not terrible.
It's not terrible, but you have to be there for all of it.
Right.
That could be, for like a lot of folks, I think a lot of folks like the whole, maybe I grind my beans, maybe I don't. I add my water, I hit the button, I walk away for 5 minutes, and I come back and my coffee's ready. For me, I don't drink coffee that often, although I was thinking about, transitioning away from it. So I keep slipping into sugary energy drinks. I'm trying to move back to more healthy things.
You're better off with just black coffee.
Yeah, and the thing about the AeroPress, the one thing that might make it worth it is really a good cup of coffee. I mean, I've never been that person to say that, but it actually is really impressive. It's really good.
I guess I'm just still happy with my plain old glass French press.
Well, there you go. If you're happy.
Having said that, though, I broke my coffee grinder this weekend.
Uh-oh.
I'm sorry, last week, and I promptly ordered another one that came this weekend.
How's that going?
This one's a step up. So my other one was just an old one where you hold it down and grind the coffee. I've now got the Hamilton Beach 8365. Feel really weird that my coffee grinder has a model number.
Yeah.
It has dials. It does it hands-free. It's awesome.
I went for the press-down grinder because I just didn't want anything complicated. But
right,
you don't really get any fine controls over the press-down grinder. It's just...
That's the problem.
Yeah. You just got to do it by however long you hold it down. Well, all right. So there's your coffee update.
Yes.
Hopefully people don't mind who are not coffee drinkers. I used to be one of those, so I understand if you don't.
Yeah. Well, until we start talking about BMWs, we're pretty much good.
Yeah, right. All right, well, why don't we get to an email? We got a good one from Paul or Pavel. Your choice. You get to pick. He writes into the show. He says, Hi, Mike and Chris. As suggested by Michael, I tried out some new languages. I chose Node.js with an app idea that will take advantage of the event model and gives me an opportunity to play with WebSockets. I also tried some of the new NoSQL hotness, but I didn't like it. Main reason was lack of features. So I'll stick with Postgres. He's going to stick with Postgres right now. Here's a quick description of the app. He says he sent us the README file. It's a BSD license. It's a currently hosted working copy of it on mll.getscuit.com. Should work on mobile. He wants to thank us for DigitalOcean and the GoDaddy promo codes. Use both of those to get this project rolling. So here's his question. He says, what is your opinion? Is it better in terms of career growth to diversify in languages and libraries or in some area of expertise that is not directly related to programming? For example, I develop map stuff for a living, or GIS, Geoinformational Systems, mostly for enterprise. To do mapping projects, I learned technologies like Map Server, PostGIS, OpenLayers, etc. That took me more than time than it took to learn Python, for example. He says, I now have an extensive knowledge about the mapping area, like projections, data formats, protocols, and best practices and standards. All the best, Pavel. So what he's kind of asking here is it better to learn and diversify languages and libraries or become an expertise and then apply that to an application? So he became an expertise in some geolocation stuff.
Right. You know, I think it's important to, how can I say this, step away from the computer sometimes. Go read a book, go play some golf, some pool, make some, picky coffee. But in reality, I mean, learn all the languages you want, play with all the toys you want, but you have to understand that I think Pavel has done a good job, right? He tried the new hotness.
Mm-hmm.
He saw some shortcomings where it wasn't appropriate for what he's actually trying to do,
right.
And he put it down.
Yeah.
Which I think is actually, Pavel's the ideal here, right?
Yeah, and it doesn't mean maybe don't ever revisit it.
No, I mean, I always play with the new hotness, but I often don't use it. I think the newest hotness that I've kind of jumped on is Docker. And that's even then I don't use it for everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say, Pavel, I think you're actually in pretty good shape.
Nice.
I like what you're doing. I approve of this message.
All right, well, should we see if I can get you in a little trouble with the audience real quick before we go too far? Because I'd hate not to give you an opportunity to put your foot in your mouth over Objective-C. So,
oh, please.
Cole writes in and he says, hey, guys, I was listening to an episode or two back, and you read some feedback from a listener talking about C over C++. Michael explained why Objective-C is a pure object orientation paradigm, more so than C++. He mentioned that you could use GNU Step to compile console programs in Linux, Windows, etc., to which Chris exclaimed, yeah, but no one does that! Which is funny and a little sad. I use GNU Step a lot as a bolt-on dev environment to my Windows and Linux boxes, and I wanted to point out, mainly for other listeners' benefit, that you are not limited to the Foundation framework in GNU Step. Foundation provides basic types like strings, arrays, etc., and you can also use AppKit to build GUI elements for your apps. If you enable the Windows theme mode, then Windows Look Native mode, you essentially get what he's talking about. There is also a live CD for more of the Tinker types that sports a Linux kernel under the hood and that's supercharged with the GNU Step framework. There are ports for Intel and PowerPC and Spark architectures, and he provides a link. Thanks for the great show, guys. So, you got a lot of sort of ancillary feedback around Objective-C. This is the only one I saw about the GNU.
Wait. Feedback? Are we going to call that feedback? Are you sure you don't mean bile?
Flames, I guess. Yeah.
Flames, yeah, that might be fair.
However, whenever I bring up GNU Step on air, there's usually one email I get. This essentially goes along these lines that does reiterate to me how GNU Step is still viable if you do XYZ. I mean, I guess. I guess what I don't know is it could be one of these things where when people are using it correctly, I don't even know they're using it, right? And when people don't use it correctly, it's so obvious.
Yeah, so the GUI stuff, I'm looking at the screenshots of this live CD. It's very next, right? It's very... It's old.
Yeah.
But he has a point that you could write stuff in GNU Step. In fact, especially if you're doing scripting or you're doing console-only applications, you could write it in GNU Step and your users would never know. Okay. I mean, maybe the Windows support has come a long way. I don't know because I'm not super interested in Windows.
Mm.
But having said that, I don't know, man. I want to agree with Cole, but I just can't. Like I just don't see it being used that much.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too.
Like if they updated the UI kit to, I, I don't know. I hope. I mean, Cole, write in again if you can like show me a modern GUI application for Linux, Mac, or Windows. I mean, Mac is probably not fair, but Linux or Windows written in GNU step, awesome. I just can't see it.
Mm-hmm.
And I could just be wrong. I mean, I could just be,
I thought
totally wrong.
I thought maybe I could kind of throw something random at your face real quick. It's a bit of an off topic, but it's something that was brought up by Paul Thurrott. He said it's the biggest problem facing Windows in 2014. I don't know if you caught that, but for me, it was kind of shocking coming from Paul Thurrott. And I want to talk about that here in just a sec. But first, I want to thank our first sponsor this week, and that, my friends, is Ting.com. Ting is mobile that makes sense. Go to coderradio.ting.com to get started. Here's what you should take away from this. Ting is redoing the way mobile is going to work for us. Now, it's early days now. Ting's one of the first, but what they're doing is going to apply market pressures to all the other carriers. And as you watch over 2014, mark my words, different elements of the Ting-like service will make their way into these carriers, but none of them will be the genuine Ting. Ting is built around the customer. No contracts, no early termination fees, and you only pay for what you use. Every phone line you have on Ting is a flat $6 a month. And if you don't use that phone, that's all you pay. All your lines can share a pooled set of minutes. So that's great for a team, for a family, for a business. All of you guys can just share from one set of pooled minutes. You only pay for what you use. Your plans include hotspot and tethering as part of your plan. Then you just pay for the data usage. They have an amazing online dashboard that lets you manage your phone and take care of many things you might want, like call forwarding, what to do when you don't answer the phone, what to do when you hit what phone to forward to if you hit the forward button. All that stuff that you normally have to know, the special codes and all of that can be set through the Ting dashboard or through the Ting app. And you got to go over to coderradio.ting.com and try out their savings calculator. This is a tool they've built where you can plug in your existing cell information, like not like bill information, but just like how much you pay, how many texts you send, stuff like that. And they'll send you out a calculation of your monthly savings. It's the beginning of the year, so it's never been a better time to start saving right now so you can have the maximum savings. And to help you get out of your existing plan, Ting offers an early termination relief program. You can find it at ting.com/ETF, and what they'll do is they'll pay up to $75 per line that you have to cancel. They also have a very active blog and an extremely active community. In fact, the Nexus 5 made it over to the Ting network because of their awesome community and Ting embracing that community. It was really awesome to watch that happen in real time. They've got tons of great devices running Android, Windows Phone. They even have feature phones that start as low as $63 when you apply our coderradio.ting.com discount. $63 for this feature phone that makes calls, lasts probably forever, since it's not that, these old phones lasted forever. And it's yours. You own it. $63 straight up. And you only pay for $6 per month for the line and what you use on top of that. Ting takes your messages, your megabytes, and your minutes, and they add those up. And wherever you're at, that's what you pay. It's so great. I've been using Ting for a year now, and I'm absolutely thrilled. I love the HTC One, and I love the Nexus 5. And what's great about the Nexus 5 is you buy it directly from Google Play. You just go get the SIM Ting, which they have, the Ting SIM, which they have right here on their store, and then you grab it, you're good to go. Another thing you might want to consider is this Novotel MiFi. Ting has a Novotel MiFi that supports Edge, 3G, 4G, and LTE. So if you got any of that in your area, for $130 after you use coderradio.ting.com, $130, you buy this device once. You own it outright, and then it's just $6. $6 within whatever you use. So if this MiFi sits in your drawer for half the month because you didn't go anywhere, you're not paying into some $67, $70 a month contract. You're only paying for what you use. And this is a great way to have mobile data on the go so that way you can stay productive. And by the way, it also supports tri-band LTE. So if you're in one of the tri-band LTE markets, you're going to get really great signal and performance. This is another great way to go. Ting often, I think a lot of people just use Ting as a mobile ISP because they have great devices like this for fantastic prices. So go to coderradio.ting.com to get started. And a huge thank to Ting for sponsoring the Coder Radio program. Mr. Dominic, just really quickly, I know we got to get to our guest, but I just wanted to ask if you saw this article on Windows IT Pro from Paul Thurrott where he said the biggest problem facing Windows in 2014 is the fact that developers just don't care about Windows. There's really no interest out there for the next breakthrough innovative application to land on Windows. And if you look back over the last couple of years, there really hasn't been some big, huge, amazing new application released for Windows. All the excitement's around mobile. Yeah, I would even argue the Mac is getting more attention than, by third-party developers and having more innovative applications. Really, Windows has kind of been in this weird, awkward transition phase now. And Thurrott says part of the problem is Microsoft is starting to make this transition at a time when developers really just can't get it up. What do you think?
Yeah, I guess it's telling. I don't really care a whole ton about Windows right now. And I feel kind of awful saying that because it's, a super large percentage of the market.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just not that
compelling to you.
Yeah, it's really not.
Yeah, I would like to actually get somebody to please write in defense of Windows, because I think that's probably an area that we don't give enough time to. And
yes.
If anybody out there, thinks otherwise, disagrees with what Thurrott said or Dominic said, email in coderradio@jupiterbroadcasting.com or pop that contact link. That's a piece of feedback I'd love to read. Speaking of feedback, Brian writes in 2014, to Mac or not to Mac? Ooh, wow, that makes it sound really kind of epic. Hey guys, wondering what your opinion is on my situation. I'm a developer who uses a Mac at work and Ubuntu laptop at home, an XPS 13 Dev Edition. I'm considering getting a more powerful laptop to do more heavy lifting for development. My project working needs are 8 gigabytes of RAM to run in dev mode and 300 gigabytes on production. Wow. I'm considering getting a new MacBook Pro, a good Lenovo, or a System 76 machine. I have a hard time trying to decide if I can go Mac. I enjoy using it at work and I've had no issues. I also have had no issues with my XPS 13 laptop. However, going forward, I'd like to use one platform to be able to do development and everything else. Ubuntu and other distros seem to be again ground, but I feel there is always a wall hit, and we're not going to see a wide application adoption. Any thoughts? Is Apple the platform solid moving forward? So Brian's asking, hey, I got my hard-earned monies here, and should I buy a Mac? Here's the way I look at it. I think, first of all, you're lying to yourself if you don't admit that the MacBooks are some of the most well-built laptops on the market. Yeah. And that goes for that portability and that battery life. When they're well-built and have good battery life, if you're moving between the office and home a lot, that can be a nice feature, especially if it's lighter. So just for my take on it is, Macs are great unless you need or want OS diversity. Now, you can run Windows on there. It always sucks. You can run Linux on there. It sucks. Mac OS is really what that laptop is literally built to run. If you're okay with that, then I would say give it serious consideration. If you want something that'll run other operating systems, if that's an important enough feature, for me, that's always the deal breaker. But for a lot of people, it's not.
Yeah, I actually think the Mac is a pretty good dev machine as long as you want to work in the Mac. Mm-hmm. It's not really a general computer, right?
Yeah.
I know a lot of folks do run Linux on Mac, but I don't think so, right?
Yeah, I know, hell, Linus Torvalds does, right? Linus Torvalds has a MacBook Air that he runs Linux on. And, if that works for him, that's great.
Right.
I have not found it to be as successful. I've tried it a few times. I gave up years ago. And the other problem is they're usually behind the curve quite a bit. So I guess if you wanted to buy the MacBook and then wait a year or two before you put Linux on it, you'd probably be okay. The trap you don't want to find yourself in is the trap that I am squarely in the middle of right now, where I have built up production tools because really they are the best in class, especially at the price point, and I am essentially chained to the Mac. And the problem is initially when they made desktop computers, that wasn't really a big concern, and when I thought I could do it with Hackintoshes too, but now as they have changed their products, but my requirements have not changed. My requirements are now incompatible with their product offerings, right? There's no product they now sell that has PCI Express slots or that takes additional internal hard drives. Not any product they sell. And that is no longer compatible with my requirements. And so the problem is I am now chained to a company and a hardware manufacturer that no longer builds the computers I need. And so that's a really tough spot to be in. So you got to make sure you don't end up there with some sort of software or something like that. But if you keep If you stay abreast of what else is out there, maybe try out different workflows. You can always run Ubuntu in VMware. It runs really good on the Mac in VMware. All those things will help. They'll all help, but just be cognizant of that, I would say. All right, Mr. Dominic, any other thoughts? Are you ready for Jeremy's question, which is a Java Play question?
Let's do Java Play, baby.
All right, here we go. Our last bit of feedback for the week. It comes in from Jeremy, and he says, Mike, I'm about to start a web app project, and I've been thinking about using Java Play since you've talked it up so much lately. I'm a noob ICE programmer with a little bit of knowledge in C, C++, C Sharp, and Objective-C.
Yes.
That's right. There we go.
Bonus points. Give him another.
It's negative in the freedom.
Oh, how'd that guy get in here? Oh,
get it out of here. Get him out of here.
I'll. You know what?
Get it out of here.
That's right. And I'll wash it all out with a little
computer. What happened?
There we go. He says, I really have no qualms learning a new language if I have to. I was wondering about hosting options with Java Play. Are there any options available that won't break the bank for a poor beginner? I have a little experience with web development, so would you suggest Java Play to a noob, or what would you suggest? Second question, can you use DigitalOcean as a web server? I ask because I have no idea when it comes to cloud stuff. Thanks, Jeremy. Yes, to his second question, yes. They have droplets that are just ready to deploy that run the LAMP stack. But if you don't know what you're doing, you might want to go a different route, something that gives you maybe maybe more like the GoDaddy route where you have like a front end management aspect to that. Because, I mean, not to get into a DigitalOcean ad, but they have awesome droplets that'll just deploy a LAMP stack for you. So his question here about would you recommend Java Play to a noob? How do you want to tackle that?
I would recommend Java Play to a trained chimpanzee. So yes, I would.
There you go. That's easy, right? Okay, well, before we get to our guest, why don't I mention DigitalOcean right now? DigitalOcean is simple cloud hosting, and it's a service that Mike and I just absolutely love. I got to tell you, if you haven't heard of DigitalOcean, go check them out over at DigitalOcean.com. They're dedicated to offering the most intuitive and easy way to spin up a cloud server, and that is no joke. Users can create a cloud server in 55 seconds, so it takes you less time to spin up a cloud server than it takes me to make an AeroPress cup of coffee.
Oh.
Right? Oh, and pricing plans start at only $5 per month for 512 megabytes of RAM, 20 gigabyte SSD, a CPU, and a terabyte of transfer. DigitalOcean has data centers in New York, San Francisco, and Amsterdam. The interface is simple, intuitive, and of course, they have a straightforward API you can use. They also offer a vast collection of tutorials in their community section, and users can submit articles and get paid up to $50 per published piece. I just featured a published piece about setting up a Beowulf cluster using DigitalOcean on Linux Unplugged last week. So guess what?
My favorite Anglo-Saxon cluster.
So guess what? We got a deal for you, and this is a hipster deal. You got to get it on this right now because I think next week, the people who didn't listen to this episode, they're going to get a new promo code. It's January, but we still have the promo code CODA December. If you act quick, you can use that in January. It's like you're going to get the same deal. You're going to get the same discount. They're going to give you a $10 credit, but you get to use the December code in January, man. That's awesome, man. You're fighting the system. So use the promo code CODA December when you check out. You'll get that $10 credit, and if you're like me using the $5 rig, you're going to get 2 months of DigitalOcean service, and you will be amazed. And like we were just telling Jeremy, they have an awesome droplet system that allows you to deploy Arch systems, Fedora systems, Ubuntu systems, etc., etc. And then they also have pre-set up systems where you can deploy an Ubuntu system 12.04 with the entire LAMP stack ready to rock, with Docker ready to rock. There's a lot of really easy setup and go. And the other great thing is you can make your own images. And once you have a setup with your environment on there, with your app, whatever it is you're working on, all the base requirements that you might need to have installed, you snapshot that thing and you can redeploy it as many times as you need for testing. And their control panel is so simple and straightforward. Do not worry. As soon as you see that, you'll know exactly what to do. It's brilliant. In fact, I've not tried it, but I bet it would even work like from an iPad. I'm looking at the UI. I bet that would actually work even good on touch.
It does.
Yeah, it's awesome. They also have a fantastic developer community, and they provide a rich set of articles that really can help you get up and going with PHP, Rails, Node.js, everything. So go check out DigitalOcean.com and use the promo code CODA December when you check out. Mike and I have been using them. Mike, you've used them for way longer than I have, but I've been using them for a few months, and I feel like this was one of the little biggest secrets I didn't know about. This is so awesome, this setup. And the fact that I get root access to my Archbox and I can go in there and set up whatever I want, and those SSDs, you can actually tell a difference with those. It's the coolest service ever, and I can only imagine, like, this is one of those things where if you could time travel back in time and tell a younger you that there would be a cloud service where you could just go spin up a server and have full control over it in 55 seconds, and it had this amazing UI, you wouldn't believe yourself. You're like, no, nobody could ever do that. But they're using all these cool Linux technologies under the hood, like KVM, to make all of this possible, and it's super awesome. So DigitalOcean.com, promo code Coder Radio December, and a big thank you to DigitalOcean for sponsoring the Coder Radio program. All right, well, I'm really excited to bring our guests on the show. Mark, am I saying your last name right if I say Heckler?
Yes, that's it.
And you are a software engineer at Oracle, right?
Yes.
Well, sir, welcome to the show. It's awesome to have you here. Now, you heard we just had a Java Play question, so I bet some Java stuff will come up. But can we start? Maybe you can tell us who you are and what you do?
Sure. Actually, I'm a software engineer at Oracle. I work in the field, so I work with Oracle's clientele, primarily large enterprise customers throughout the Midwest, but I've been known to bounce around when asked, doing mostly enterprisey stuff, but it varies quite a bit. Anything from front end to back end to Java in the database. So kind of where the voices in my head tell me to go, that's where I go.
Well, now, Mike, so why did we bring Mark on today? What are we going to talk to Mark about?
Oh, actually, we made a deal with Oracle, don't you remember?
Right. We can only say nice things about Java and all of their staff, and Larry especially. There's a big clause in there about Larry, and so now we're contractually obligated.
Sorry, that's Uncle Larry. Thank you very much.
Right.
No, Mark was actually, we kind of brought Mark on to ambush him because a friend of mine has been missing for several years.
This is important.
He was missing in action, taken from the field. Mark, where the hell is Java Duke?
Duke is alive and well. Duke has been seen in many places with Elvis throughout the country and around the world, actually.
He's touring, is he?
And now that you mention that, we probably about a year ago, there was a new screensaver released, which was kind of exciting because now it was Future Duke. And this past year at Java 1, it was really focusing on the science. So you had Scientist Duke. And I haven't seen any new graphical images along those lines yet. But I found out something kind of interesting. The Duke graphics were open sourced back in 2006. So anybody can take them and create their own Duke.
No kidding.
So yeah.
Fingertips new mascot, baby.
So this is why you ended up, like, I'm doing a Google image search right now, and here's Duke with a chainsaw.
Okay. Well, I guess there's quite a bit of latitude.
Yeah. That's the important question, of course. So that's the top question.
Of course. No, but who are you? What kind of stuff are you doing? I hear you're building robots.
Well, a little bit of everything. The work stuff is probably much like you would expect, and therefore I won't spend a lot of time on it because it is more enterprisey. It is more, the back end things. But some of the things that keep bubbling to the top, whether it's with clients or whether it's just kind of in the general press, is the whole embedded space. And I know that's not unique to Java, but it's a very exciting place to be with Java. So I started looking into that kind of on my own independently. And interestingly, I'm also a renewable energy buff and enthusiast. And I started throwing some information back and forth with some folks kind of around the world, some folks in Brazil, a gentleman in Spain and other places. And the gentleman in Spain and I kind of were meeting in the middle from both ends. He had a very large renewable energy system, and I had a very small one I was building up. And we started looking at ways to inject Java embedded into that to monitor and control. And we wound up getting together for a presentation at Java 1 this past year, which we had a great time doing, hauled a bunch of equipment out there, and just kind of showed the full hookup with what we called the self-licking ice cream cone. We have a small renewable energy system with solar panels, photovoltaics, and a small wind turbine, and we're using that to power the system that monitored and controlled that system. So it kept readings. It allowed you to make some modifications to it, and it radioed all the information back in and stored it on a server. So we got the opportunity after Java 1 to, and now it looks like we're going to be presenting in Stockholm, Sweden at JFocus. And we've built it out a little bit because we were running straight Java embedded suite on the Raspberry Pi for a server. And now, a lot of people don't realize that Java Enterprise Edition is not a big, heavy, lumbering beast.
Yeah, and Mark, if the comments on this show and YouTube have taught me anything, it's definitely that everything you said is a lie.
Oh, okay.
And Java is definitely dirt slow. How is this happening?
Well, I can tell you this. I didn't go into my first round of testing on the Raspberry Pi with full-blown Java Enterprise Edition with a lot of hopes. But interestingly enough, if you go out and download Glassfish, full Java EE is under 100 meg, and Java EE web profile Glassfish 4 web profile, is 55 meg. So when you install that, and it installs very nicely on a Raspberry Pi, you do have some adjustments to make. When you pull up the admin console, it takes a little bit longer than it would on a full-blown server. But you can run that very, very well, very nicely, and have a database behind it, the JavaDB, and set up WebSockets and RESTful web interfaces and have it just hum along on a Raspberry Pi like it's just happy as can be. So yeah, you discover that there's a lot more power there with a lot less weight than what you realized. And I know that probably just sounded like a commercial, and I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. So let me ask you, because a lot of our listeners are actually not Java guys. We have a lot of Python, a lot of misguided Node children. So when I'm doing my Java play, it's Java SE, right? Standard edition. Can you explain what the difference? I know it's a silly question, but in like 100 words or less between EE and SE?
Let's see. Well, Java EE, I'm trying to think of probably the best way to put it. Java EE has more of your server-side interfaces where you can, let's see, how do I put this? Enterprise Java Beans, context and dependency injection. It gives you the ability to, 100 words or less, develop server-side interfaces and interface with databases in a managed and controlled way.
Right. So there's a lot of ORM functionality, a lot of big, scary enterprise stuff.
Yeah, and it's not really that scary. That's the thing it's so nice because it manages a lot of that for you. And if it comes with a lot of weight, that would be one thing. But anymore, since Java EE 6, they slimmed that down quite a bit. And Java EE 7 continued that slimming to where now it's pretty performant.
So I can second that. I'm actually using Java 7. I rarely use EE, but for most of what I'm doing, I'm using SE. Mm-hmm. Boy, Java 7's a lot nicer than Java was when I first touched Java.
Right.
It's come quite a long way.
Yeah, I had a similar voyage. Actually, I did a lot of work early in Java and then did some work throughout, but not as much kind of in the doldrums stage,
right,
as I kind of refer to it. And again, not to sound too much like a cheerleader, but Sun had a lot of struggles toward the end of Sun's life. And they did a lot of very good things, but they were really struggling to do anything at all toward the end. So when Oracle bought Sun, from the outside, because I work in the field, I don't work at corporate, but it seemed like there was some new life being breathed in, and it seems like from the community involvement and excitement, that seems to be the case.
Now, on your embedded work, are you using Java 7?
Actually, on the server side, yeah, I'm using EE7 Glassfish 4. On the remote, I have a small Raspberry Pi operating as a central remote node out, radioing in the readings and whatnot. That I'm using actually JDK8.
Well, look at you.
I'm not really doing anything that's pushing it at this point. I just figured why not throw it out there with the early versions and see what broke, what didn't, and everything's been running pretty smoothly.
That's
really
awesome. Huh. Well, I got it. I don't mean to be the dunce of the class here, but I'm not really familiar with what's different between Java embedded and the standard Java that most of us are familiar with. What makes Java embedded? The embedded part of it is what's been removed. What can't it do?
Well, let me back up one step. When I first started down this path, I was looking straight at embedded, SE embedded, and even possibly ME. And those are, I guess, what you call true embedded solutions. Right. Really, I'm doing more of a seeing how small Java can go in its standard edition and enterprise edition forms on embedded platforms. So I guess,
is that more possible because embedded platforms are coming up too? Is it like, are the two things meeting? Like, it's a refinement process of Java itself, and the embedded devices are also becoming a little more capable. So the two are meeting, or is it something different?
Yeah, I really think so. I think there's, and probably always will be, a specific market or a need for the embedded specific solutions.
And you're talking beyond cell phones and things like that, right? You're talking like,
yeah. But you've got so capable of devices, like you said, they're kind of coming up. I mean, you have phones and tablets that are very, very powerful in the spectrum, in the along the spectrum, and then you have the Raspberry Pi, which doesn't seem like it would have a lot of power. And it doesn't have a lot of memory, but it has enough capability. And of course, the Raspberry Pi Foundation put out the information where you can overclock safely up to a certain amount. I think I stepped back one from the top, and it keeps things consistent, doesn't corrupt file systems. Everything runs smoothly and quickly. So you've got a very capable, tiny piece of hardware for $40 that you can put to use running pretty much anything you can throw at it. So
when I think of Java, I think of portability for my applications, right? So am I gonna live in a world where I could make an application that runs on a desktop? Maybe it's not a very advanced application, it could be even a command line application or something, and then I can move that to a Java embedded device? Are we gonna have that type of portability? Or is it more like, if I know how to write for one type of Java, I can make something run on Java embedded?
Well, and again, it depends on which way you're looking at it. If you're going straight embedded, right now there is a smaller subset of capabilities in that.
Okay.
But again, they're looking at building out, and again, I say they because I'm not in that development team. But it's very well published. It's public information. They're looking at building out different levels or layers of interfaces that you can adhere to and still stay safely able to run it pretty much anywhere you want or need to.
Yeah.
But again, you've got a lot of capability in a small device to run full Java SE or even Java E. So then you're really not restricted at all.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. All right, well, let me pause right here for a quick sec and thank our last sponsor this week, and that is the fine folks over at GoDaddy.com. Now, GoDaddy's got a brand new deal. Did you know it's a new year, everybody? GoDaddy's got a $295.com for us. If you use the promo code 295CODER when you check out, you can get a .com for $2.95. GoDaddy is the world's #1 domain name registrar, and they are kicking it up. It is go time over at GoDaddy. And I got to tell you, we've also got another special deal for the Coder Radio audience. Maybe you're getting a few things. Like, throw a few things in that basket. Maybe you're getting some hosting and a domain. Maybe you're going to get a few domains. If you use the promo code 30DEAL2, all one word, 30DEAL2, when you check out, you'll get anything new over at GoDaddy for 30% off. That's a pretty great deal. Now, I'm not saying the $295.com isn't a good deal. If you just need to go in there and get a .com, by the way, additional year is $9.99. Use the promo code 295CODER, and that's just such an amazing deal to get some real estate on the internet. But look, if you're getting a whole bunch of stuff, the best way you're going to save money is that 30% offer, 30DEAL2 when you check out, 30DEAL2 when you check out over at GoDaddy.com to get that. GoDaddy is a longtime sponsor of the Coder Radio program. And I've worked with them in my professional career as well. Well, not that this isn't professional, but you know what I mean, my contracting career, where I always knew when I would go into a client, if they weren't registered with GoDaddy, we would have problems. We were going to have issues. If they're registered with GoDaddy, it was always a major relief, so much so that I would go in and do pre-contract audits where we offered them a free inspection service, but really it was like, how compatible are they with our services? And there was literally a spot on my form if they had GoDaddy or not, because we knew, the whole company knew that if they had GoDaddy, this is going to be a smooth transition. They're an awesome group-focused collaboration tools. They have all of these amazing permission-based folders that you can just move one domain into, and all of the permissions apply to that folder, apply to everybody that goes in there. So if you have a client and you don't want to have to get all their login information, you set up this folder structure, you move their domain into that folder structure, and then when you're no longer their contractor anymore, they just simply take their domain out of that folder and you can't get access to it anymore. And that made it so easy to handle this kind of stuff. So really, if you're going to get a .com, GoDaddy's the place to do it. $2.95 Coder. If you're getting a whole bunch of stuff, $30 deal too. A huge thank you to GoDaddy for sponsoring the Coder Radio program. Sorry about the interruption, guys. I wanted to make sure we gave a quick plug to our longtime sponsors there. And now I didn't mean to interrupt, Mr. Dominic. So resume where you are. I know we have a few questions about the future, but we don't have to get to that yet if you don't want.
So I would ask, Mark, people have been a little down on the Java these days, looking at the new hotness, the Node.js, things like that. How do you feel about that? How do you respond to that?
Well, I think there are a lot of good solutions to a lot of problems out there. So I don't necessarily think there are a lot of bad solutions out there banging around just looking for problems. There obviously are some, but I guess I just keep coming back to there's kind of a tool du jour and a platform du jour. And it just keeps rotating out. But you typically, at least for me as a developer, I'm looking for something, a platform that's well established, that's well supported, that has a great active community, that has a lot of libraries, a lot of code out there that you can access and borrow from and embellish or enhance and extend and use and build on and grow with. And Java has all that, but I also look for, where a company or a community is taking things. And there's a lot of exciting stuff going in the Java ecosystem, not just the Java language. I mean, the whole JVM environment where you have different languages that are running on it, Scala and Clojure and some other things that are just, they have thriving communities. They have a lot of support out there for those, in addition to Java itself. So to me, I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with some of the other solutions, but I think I would want to look at what's out there as far as well supported, that has a huge, growing, thriving community, that has maybe some things that are already in place, as well as a future direction that it's going. And that's kind of where I put myself. So
what do you think Java needs to do to stay competitive? And not that it's not, I'm not saying that, but like if you could have a wish list of things you'd like to see done to just keep that competitive edge, what would those be?
Well, I think they're doing it. You have a lot of community-based initiatives and community-focused initiatives, and that was one thing I think that a lot of people were nervous about when Oracle got a hold of Java, is that they were afraid all that would go away because Sun was pretty open. Well, surprisingly to some in the community, Oracle has actually opened up a lot of things. You have a lot of areas that have been open sourced. You have OpenJDK, which is serving as the front end for development. The front of the funnel, I guess you would say, for development of each JDK release. You have OpenJFX, which is the open version of JavaFX. You have, again, growing and thriving communities. You have initiatives that are taking place for iOS ports of JavaFX, for Android ports. You have a huge amount of community involvement, and in some cases, you have community driving entire efforts as well. So you've got a lot of things going on. Plus, you have Oracle not sitting back and letting the community do it all either. You have Mark Reinhold and the whole architecture team, and they're doing some really cool things. You have the whole Nashorn thing with the JavaScript integration and compiler, and you have so many things that are going on internally, externally, community involved. So I think they're doing a lot of those things. I don't really see holes. I'm sure there probably are. I'm sure that somebody can identify things that they say, well, this is important to me, and I don't see it being addressed. But the team is really, I say the team as far as a community. There are mailing lists and bug trackers, and all of that's open to the public, so they can get involved. People can get involved, and if they see a hole, help plug that.
Excellent point.
I think it's going really well. And I have yet to see a lot of people who don't feel that way, even if they, again, their pet project isn't necessarily getting the attention they might like. They're able to contribute and help advance that. So,
I was going to shift gears, Mr. Dominic, unless you have a follow up to that.
No, let's shift away.
This is sort of tangentially related, but I look at a lot of the efforts that, Android aside, that Google is making to deliver applications through the web, through HTML5. I look at like iOS, where Java's kind of left out there. Are these concerns for you? Do you think that's something that is going to hurt Java, or do you feel like it's going back to that whole there's a lot of options out there? But I look at this and I think, gosh, these really fast evolving platforms are so locked down and so controlled that there's not really an opportunity for Java to have a role there, unless it's on the back end, I suppose. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I would just jump in here. It's particularly in mobile, the client side is starting to matter less and less. So even if the front end is, I think you're conflating mobile as one entity. A lot of apps are basically trivial front ends to complicated back ends.
That's a really good point.
And in the cases where you don't do that, you're probably just doing design UX stuff in the native language. So I would counter that. In fact, the only language looking to be diminished by mobile is probably going to be Objective-C, right? Which makes me cry every night. Because as bad, what I would consider bad, HTML5 becomes, quote, good enough.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to put resources into the front end for most line of business applications.
But isn't that just the state of it now? I mean, don't you think mobile applications, a lot like early desktop applications, started very simple, but will eventually, 10 years down the road, we'll have applications of the caliber of Photoshop, Logic, and things like that on mobile?
You're also conflating the consumer and the enterprise market for mobile, though. And we're just now seeing the market fracture into consumer and enterprise. Okay. Now, consumer is very sexy, and that's going to end up on The Verge and TechCrunch.
Yeah.
But enterprise is where, folks like me are going to make their money.
Right, but don't you think, even if it's enterprise applications, they're going to be more sophisticated, more advanced on mobile? Right?
No, they're not. That's the fallacy. No.
Okay.
The front ends are going to get simpler and uglier, and everything is... The trend is now happening on the server.
We're going back to the mainframe.
We're going back to the mainframe, exactly.
Well, and I guess for Mark, that's good news.
Yeah, it's great news for the Java EE folks. Not so great news for the few, the proud, the Objective-C.
While we're talking about Java, Mark, what are your thoughts on the future of Java?
I think it's good. I mean, you see a lot of continued development and a lot of exciting things. My latest thing that I'm really excited about is WebSockets. It's a full web standard, but it's something that's also implemented in Java EE7. And people are recognizing without Oracle everywhere. Certain standards are going to eat the world, and you're seeing Java adhering to those standards very rigorously. So I think the future is great.
Future is bright. I like that. It's positive. Well, Mark, thank you very much for joining us this week. A lot of this stuff was really good insight for me to hear, and I hope for some of the audience to hear as well.
Yeah, well, I hope I don't get flamed too badly.
No, are you kidding me? No, of course not.
Thank you both for having me on here, and thanks to the listeners for putting up with me.
Absolutely.
Not a problem. Come back anytime. We can talk about robots.
Great. Okay, good. Thanks.
All right, Mark. Well, have a great rest of your day, and maybe we'll chat soon, okay?
Okay, you too. Thanks.
Bye.
Take it easy. Bye.
I was just thinking, Mr. Dominic, while we were talking about the future, you did a blog post called 2014 Predictions over at dominicm.com, and I
did.
I think we should link that in the show notes so people can read it, but not too surprising, you made a big call out to Docker.
I did. If you want to just take the remaining 10 minutes and talk about it, I'd be happy to do that.
Oh, sure, yeah. So let's do this. So do you want to do it by category? So we got Docker, and then the next one.
Let's just go right down the list.
All right, so let's start with Docker. You say it's the darling of the development community right now, and for a good reason. Now, I'll tell you, I've gotten feedback on our Docker. People think 2014 is not going to be a good year, but you disagree.
I think it's going to be a good year for Docker. I'm just going to summarize. But I also think there's going to be a bit of hype, and with hype, there's going to be backlash. So my prediction for Docker is it's going to become like Rails is now, right? That they probably take 2 to 3 years like it did with Rails. 2014 is going to be a year of exceptional hype, and then we're going to get back down to people using it in ways that it makes sense. Kind of like Node.js is going through right now, right?
Yeah.
It's that adolescence. The new hotness always has the, oh my God, I'm going to drop my current tool chain to use this, and then, wait, that was really stupid, let's go back. Now, the issue, I think that some of the backlash you're probably hearing is the beginning of that, well, this is the new sexy thing. And, it's just always fun to be against the cool thing, right? It's always great to be the hipster.
I think you nailed it, yeah, because we are starting to see pushback on that now.
Right.
That's just, like clockwork.
It happens.
Yeah.
The next thing I listed was Windows 8, and by that I mean all of Windows 8, Windows Phone, WinRT, the whole shebang.
Yeah.
I'll quote myself. Windows 8's RT offering is in a lot of trouble.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I think they're screwed.
Yeah.
It's just been too long. They're fighting attrition, especially with this Threshold project, which for people who don't follow Microsoft, they're basically, it sounds like they want to merge WinPhone, WinRT, and Windows 8. Or at least WinRT and WinPhone.
I think part of the lesson here is not only was Microsoft too late to get consumers to buy their products in mass, but they also waited long enough that the developer community moved on. And so it's not, so when we think of, launch early to capture the market, it's not actually just capturing consumers, but it's also capturing those developers.
For me, the problem is that, the big pitch for Windows 8 was it's one platform.
UI, yeah.
Right. Well, not even UI, it's one platform for all your devices.
Right, you got the Windows
Store. And now they're
Store.
basically doing iOS OS 10. Right? They're going to have WinRT, or whatever they call it, is the mobile, and Windows 8 is the desktop. So they're doing what Apple did 5 years ago, or 4 years ago. Not good.
Azure?
Along this, Azure, I see good things for Azure. There's that rumor of Project Midori, which I still think is like Windows something in the cloud. Maybe even a version of Unix. But all in all, Azure is going to do well. As more enterprises move to the cloud, they're going to go to Azure if they're not Oracle or Java shops.
Oh, you got an OS 10 prediction in here.
I do, and I kind of went long on the OS 10. So basically, I think 2013 was a correction for OS 10, right? They were correcting the horrors that are stitched leather and coming back to being a desktop operating system.
Yeah, and I think they, Mavericks showed a surprising resistance to iOSification of the desktop.
Right. So, my thing is that all in all, that the merging iOS and OS 10 didn't really work, except for Gatekeeper, which is probably the biggest thing they did, right? And they've tweaked it enough that Gatekeeper has gone from being a nuisance to actually being a reasonable default setting that I use on my machine.
That's interesting. There's other touches that they've taken. So what I feel like what they did in this sort of correction is, for example, the app nap and things like that that are iOS inspired. And the other thing they've done is like silly things like they now use the ambient light sensor like they do on iOS to detect if there's movement before they sleep the screen. So it's part of the should we sleep the screen equation now is they're actually watching ambient light changes from the light sensor. And that's intelligent. And they did that on their mobile and they thought, hey, you know what? We could do that on the desktop. Those kinds of things without rehauling the entire UI are kind of brilliant. I think other people should take note. Only the thing is Apple's doing it so subtly that nobody really notices.
Right. And if they continue the course, which I think they will in 2014, of subtle borrowing from mobile, but really enhancing OS 10 as a desktop operating system,
they're going to get really competitive, especially as Windows blows it.
As Windows blows it, and as the Linux, I would say community, but I really mean canonical, fails to have a unified goal and a unified, a unified product, I think they're going to continue to make gains, as they have over the last.
But they're essentially doing it too late. I mean, they really needed to have a product at this point in time to capture new market. Now this year, 2014, their desktop is in maintenance mode.
Right. So this is actually my next one, Ubuntu /Linux. Now, this is interesting. I was going to only do Linux, but since we're focusing on desktop more. Right. I mean, for the server, Linux is already won, and I don't think anybody can deny that. Right. I mean, Linux is won almost hands down. But the problem is on the desktop, when I think Linux, I still think Ubuntu. And it's weird because, several years ago, you would have thought Ubuntu Fedora. Now it's Ubuntu and a bunch of very, very small little players.
Yep.
In my mind, the Linux desktop is actually in a worse place than it's ever been in the last 10 years.
For developers to target.
Well, even from a commercial, it just as a viable product to hopefully get some market share.
Yeah.
I don't see Canonical doing any kind of course reversal, only because that would be such a big mea culpa at this point that I don't know if it's almost too big of a mea culpa for them to do, right?
Right. Well, no, they're just going to press ahead. Yeah.
Right. And unfortunately, what I'm seeing kind of, because working on some Linux stuff, kind of talking with the community on the sly, folks aren't going to another big vendor now. They're going like, well, I'm going to roll my own Arch-based distro, which is kind of a dev's nightmare, right?
Yeah. There's a lot of little differences there. It's almost like Android. Oh, I kid. It's not. It's actually way worse.
My other prediction is as the desktops become more custom and Canonical continues to falter, you're going to see a lot of web devs continue to drain over to the Mac side because it's just not worth it.
The positive side is a lot of these other different distros like Fedora and Arch and OpenSUSE, their common cores are becoming more common. And so the differences between them over 2014 are going to become less and less. And the problem is there's still going to be big differences because the display servers are going to be getting changed out over 2014 or begin to. There's the Linux desktop, while congealing in some sense, is also still continuing to fragment in another sense.
Right.
So it's a tough spot. And I mean, I guess there's so. It's funny. In the enterprise, 1204 is acceptable. It's 1204 is a good product and it's going to be supported for years. And you would in an enterprise you would use the long-term support version.
Of course.
And so you have 4 years before you even need to check back in with what Ubuntu's doing. And by then, the whole convergence new UI Unity 8 will be well and done theoretically. So if you look at it in that light, the problem is there's two different Ubuntus. There's the current Ubuntu, and then there's the enterprise Ubuntu, and they're
the
two different
LTSs
beasts.
have never been better, right?
Right, exactly.
That's true.
Yeah, and in fact, the 1204 is at a very good point right now, and you could run that desktop for a while.
And to be fair, I'm running 13.4. Actually, I'm running 13.10 now, but on my Dell desktop, it's fine. The problem I'm more getting at is that it was a large effort for Canonical to do what they did with Unity and get it to the point where it didn't suck, right? Where it was
and it still needs work.
I mean, the APIs are okay, but
Compiz is a resource beast. Don't hate, but it is. People always say, no, it's not. It is.
They very publicly said that that's not a priority right now.
Right, yeah.
So I'm not sure how that's going to play out. I mean, my prediction is badly.
Yeah.
I mean, you'll notice that I don't talk about Firefox OS. I don't talk about Java. It's not because I don't like those things, but that market's pretty sown. And if anybody was going to get in there, I kind of think it would be Windows or Firefox.
Or BlackBerry.
Yeah, right. I don't see Canonical really being able to pull that off.
So, I talked on Last yesterday about GNOME 3. And the reason I did is because I think at the end of 2014, as Linux kind of congeals together with, I like Arch right now a lot because it's very much what Linux is going to be at the end of 2014, and Fedora is a lot like that too. There's a lot of consistencies between those two distributions now, and with GNOME, it's getting to be a very elegant desktop. It feels, it feels much more modern than Mac OS 10. When I say the Mac, the Mac is very functional, and there's nothing I can't accomplish when I'm using Mac OS 10. But I will tell you, it does feel like a UI of a previous generation. It just starting to me seem a little old. Whereas GNOME is very modern, very elegant, and I think in a couple of releases. Maybe in 2015, GNOME and a lot of these Linux distros, there's going to be a really tight integration there. It could be really nice, but that's a ways off. However, that might, maybe the LTS of Ubuntu holds people until that point, and then when they go looking, the other thing too is as Linux increases in popularity, we will come up with new tricks to run applications like. Docker could solve that problem, or you could look at what Valve's doing, where they create a Steam runtime, and it's not like a Java machine. It's like a directory of libraries and things that everything can count on having, so everybody writes to that. And so that's an interesting way too.
Yeah, I mean, on the software side, what's going to happen is what's always happened, right? Linux users are going to end up having to accept kind of compromised UXs, depending on what they're running, right?
But every desktop is once we all start using web apps. That's all these things are going to be compromised UXs.
So the issue for me is without a vendor, my thing has always been it would be good for the market if you could walk into a big box retailer, have a MacBook, a Dell for Windows, and then a Dell for Linux next to each other, right? And I just don't see that happening now that Canonical's totally dropped the ball.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
It's going to be a great year for Macs.
Yeah, I think it's going to be. I mean, at this point, it's kind of Apple's game to lose.
Yeah.
I mean, as Microsoft keeps changing their mind about their platforms.
And don't forget, we're doing this right before CES 2014, and the rumor ahead of time is a lot of vendors are going to be showing their products that, hey, by the way, we also boot Android.
Yeah,
it's going to be a great year for Android too. It's going to be Apple and Android just going at it. That's what this, unfortunately, and it's not that I don't think Canonical would have been like right there, would have had just as equal chances. It's not like they've missed out on some ginormous opportunity, but I do think there's an opportunity that was lost. And because there's a lot of people at the IT level that are current on this stuff, doing research. XP support's ending. It could have been a boon. But I think a lot of that stuff's going to go.
And I think one thing working in Apple's favor on the desktop is where you say, Aqua, which is, fun fact, the name of the OS X desktop is stale. A lot of IT folks are going to read that as stable.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
Yeah, and that's going to be a big push in that direction.
It's in some ways right now it represents a consistency that Microsoft just threw out with Windows 8.1, that when people see that consistency, they'll see it as an appealing thing.
And I think the problem for Microsoft is more existential, is that they've changed their mind so many times in an 18-month period that even if they come out, if Threshold's amazing and the new hotness, it's going to be very hard to convince anybody who's not an avid Microsoft person to put any kind of large investment behind that.
And so it begins. Mark just linked us in our show notes chat here, this article that's coming out from CES. HP announces a all-in-one PC that runs Android.
Yeah, and I mean Chrome. Honestly, the game is Google and Apple at this point, right?
Yeah. So this is CES. This is what CES is going to be. A lot of these.
Yeah.
God, I don't know about running Android on desktops. We could probably save that for future discussion. Now,
we can save that.
Was that the last prediction right there? Was that it? Is that where we? Yeah. Okay. Well, you guys can read the whole thing. Well, I'll link it in the show notes too. It's good write-up.
The general introduction to the post I gave was, I think 2014 is not going to be a mind-blowing year. It's going to be an iteration year and kind of setting the stage. Just because I see a lot of profit taking in mobile right now, right? People are going to start copying things. It's going to, before we do any big leaps.
Mm-hmm.
I hope I'm wrong, but in all honesty, it wouldn't be bad for 2014 to be a transitional year.
I think that's what we'll get. That's what we're going to get. All right, Mr. Dominic. Well, look, here's the thing. Did you know that we do this show live? Did you know that? We do it live on a Monday, 9 a.m. noon Eastern.
Dead.
jblive.tv, and we'd love to have you join us, star in our chat room, and you get to help us title the show, and we vote on those after the episode. We can also always use your feedback. Go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com, pop that contact link, and choose Coda Radio from the drop-down. You can also hit up our subreddit, codaradio.reddit.com, or just email us, codaradio@jupiterbroadcasting.com. We got a fun episode. In fact, we're going to take calls next week, aren't we?
Woo!
So join us next week in the Mumble Room, and we'll be taking your calls. We would love to see you and chat with you, so it'll be a great episode. So join us for that, and you'll get the Mumble info if you just join our chat room and do Bang Mumble. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning this week's episode of Coda Radio. We'll see you right back here next week.